Okay, so I sent out a questionnaire to do with people submitting questions anonymously. One of the questions was that if 5 years makes a unicorn, what does 6 years make? What does 7 years make? So we usually say 5 years makes a unicorn because it's rare to be here for that long. We had some interesting responses. It's just four. I'll quickly go through them. So the first person wrote sixth year equals Pegasus.
Pegasus.
The seventh year equals Ghoul. Yeah. That's personal. All right. Next, 6 years equals a Kirin, and 7 years equals a Hashirama. And in brackets, it said, please understand this reference. I'm sorry. Is this like a Naruto thing?
No, I think the Demon Slayer thing, if I'm not mistaken.
Demons? I watch Demons. Oh, okay. And then the next one, Liger, a la Napoleon Dynamite, or Chimera. And then the final one, 6 years equals a dragon, 7 years equals a week. I know, I'm not sure what's going on. Okay, so I'm just going to start from the top. I'm going to read the first question that was sent out. And I think the best way to do this, if Unicorn panel members, if you don't mind raising your hand, if you feel like you have some input on this, and then I'll try to mediate it. So the first question, do you feel your relationships at your school with other teachers has improved over the years? I'm a first year and I'm struggling to feel included at school. Cameron, please.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say, this is going to sound silly, but I would say yes and no. There are definitely some teachers who just don't care about the ALT. That sounds really rude, but like they just don't have any interest. They've got their own life, they've got their own work schedule, and like they just have no interest in trying to become friends with the ALT, which that's fine. That's their prerogative. It is what it is. But at the same time, there are other teachers that, yeah, it took some time. And I would typically say after, which it's difficult with the current situation, but like typically after like the first NCHI or something, the first, where teachers can kind of cut loose and be themselves, that is usually where those friendships start to form, because no one's really thinking about work or anything. Everybody's just kind of trying to have fun, and you can, open up a little bit more about yourself, and you can have these conversations without feeling like you're infringing on the work that they're doing. So I would say yes and no.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and I think it's a tough time for those kind of events to occur, given what's happening. Next, Veronica.
Yeah, I was going to say similarly yes and no, because especially for you guys, as you're going to find out very quickly, some of those teachers aren't going to be there after March. Some of the teachers end up leaving and going to a different city altogether. So obviously you have to reintroduce yourself to somebody new all over again, and kind of have to start that kind of relationship and getting to know one another all over again with the new school year. Or maybe the school, I've had a couple of instances where I had a teacher at one school transferred from one school to another elementary. So they went from one elementary to another. And so it's like, oh, I know you, we're going to get along fine. And so it's just a matter of time getting to know one another. Like Cameron said, it's a lot easier during the time when we could have NCHIs and get-togethers. But I think just having time to just find little ways to introduce yourself, like introduce things that you like about yourself, so that you can maybe find a common ground with some of those teachers, that you can kind of break the ice. But yeah, I think over time it'll get better, for sure.
Yeah, for sure, I agree. And sometimes it takes a while to break some of that ice. Juan.
Yeah, so yeah, for me it's the same, yes and no. I remember in my first year I was really frustrated with some teachers, and at first, and later on we just kind of like break the ice, have some small chit chat, walk into the teacher's room and stuff. Later on we really got along really well. And there are teachers that you would never get along with, and I've had those, and April's coming, maybe they'll transfer away, maybe they won't, you're stuck with them forever. Because I've had a teacher that I don't get along with, and I've never got along with. So yeah, it's yes and no.
Yeah, completely agree. I've lost so many. Rumina.
So obviously, I usually don't have that many contacts that are teachers, but there are some that I've made. But even for other jobs, there's kind of two things that I've managed to find that properly connect me. There's one that's like a half a thing, which is just feeding people. You feed them, you connect with them. It works in my whole society, you know, where I come from, my culture. You feed somebody, you connect. But the thing where it's about communication, one of them is finding an interest, their interest, not specifically yours, which can be difficult, especially because due to the overwork, a lot of teachers have dropped their interests, and a lot of interests are also considered childish if they're not your profession. So it's a little difficult sometimes to kind of dig in and find what it is, and maybe even like put a little spark of fire in it to remind them what they like. And the second thing is, and I know this doesn't work for everyone, complaining. Managing to make a connection with somebody so they feel comfortable to complain to you about whatever is happening out there can make a really deep connection with you.
Thank you. All right, and then Dom.
Yeah, of course, a lot of my opinions have already been said, but one thing I'd like to bring up is that it's kind of unfortunate that we don't know this, but from what I've heard, a lot of Japanese teachers, they do actually want to, you know, not hang out, but like get to know us outside the classroom. But just as, I don't want to say scared, but for lack of a better word, scared as we are to be the first to initiate, it sucks because from what I've heard over the years, it's the same way it's the same opinion from their side. So all I'm going to say is don't take it personally. If you don't feel comfortable doing that, me 6 years in, I still oftentimes don't feel comfortable being the first one to engage with a certain teacher. Hey, do you want to grab a drink sometime? Hey, do you want to go grab dinner sometime? Do you want to go, you know, do whatever? They're just, it's, I don't know, they find it, because we're the foreigner, they find us, they want to get to know us, but they find it hard to be the first one to interact, is pretty much what I'm getting at. And what they don't understand is that it's as hard as it is for them, it's harder for us because we're in this situation from a different country. So all I'm going to say is try, if you can, if you feel comfortable, just work up the courage, I guess, and try to be the first to make that interaction happen. If you don't, then, you know, I'm not going to fault you. I've been at this 6 years now, and some teachers I felt comfortable doing it with, others not so much. So just, it'll take time.
Yeah, for sure. I think I'll just add to that as well, that it does take time. Different people for different amount of times. And then I'll echo what I said earlier on in all this, is that before and after a lesson, before and after you react with the JTE, we're not privy to like exactly what goes on. We all know they're busy, but like they are really busy. And we also have our own schedules and things going on. It's hard to keep in mind exactly, like someone else mentioned as well, not to take it personally, because again, we don't know what's happened before and after. The only things that we do truly know for sure in a lot of cases is that they're super busy and often tired and have like a million other things to do. And then the one social reaction, it just makes it that much harder to do something more like to connect basically like this when everyone is so busy as well and at work. Okay, next question. What have been some positives for you to come out of the coronavirus pandemic? It's an interesting one. I'm going to need some more time if someone wants to. Oh, Enge, thank you.
Japan finally does some takeout and deliveries. I know this is not what you're expecting, but when I arrived in Japan, none of the nice cafes or restaurants had takeout, and I didn't drive, so I couldn't go to town or go to a place and take something home to settle and relax and have it. And now everyone is like, takeout. I'm like, yes. So that's one. Also, the pandemic has got me to change my future plans, or how I thought this program will, like how I envision myself through the program. So like big life changes and making different decisions than what I thought 3 years ago. So yeah, drastic changes, drastic life decisions.
Thank you.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
for sure. I'm very grateful for delivery too. Rumina.
For Japan specifically, I was happy to see all the, all the hand washing, all the mask wearing, because it was so easily kind of integrated here. And it actually was one of the first times not to catch influenza here or some of the other bugs. I think a lot of people actually got saved from that because people were more careful and everything. So it was nice to see that there's a bit of power in us to kind of deal with that, to do something about that. It just needs to be kind of from all of us. But the really big thing for me from the pandemic is not Japan specific, though I think I've seen it here too, is a lot of people were forced to go online. And I joined in on Twitter, and it was kind of what I was experiencing on the island 3 years, feeling very isolated, feeling like I didn't have anyone to talk to, feeling the exhaustion of only having relationships, the main relationships in my life being online, and everything being kind of any entertainment online, and always living in that space of while everyone is asleep, I'm awake, and the other way around. Finally, the world learned how it felt to be that, to be isolated, to have everything just online, to be disconnected. And I think people started understanding certain things about it more, so managed to kind of bridge a gap to find an understanding. And also a lot of people opened up online, which allowed me to see so many more groups of people that I've never met personally in life or have never had the chance to delve deep enough to find that out about them. So it was a very good reflective period for me, and I actually discovered a lot of stuff about myself and a lot about other groups that I didn't know much about before.
Thank you. Oh, I think Don put his hand down. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And then I will just add a little bit to that about the self-reflection. I became the peer just as the pandemic started to affect everything here in Japan. So this position and all my expectations of the rest of it went out of a few windows. I didn't realize how long it was going to last for, the scale of it, any like that. I'm sure like everyone else. To think about like any positives and stuff is really hard for me. I think it's been really difficult for everyone. If I was to think about any positives, it is like inwardly being able to find time to address personal things like mentally, physically, or whatever. Even though it kind of is because I had to, if that makes sense. Like sometimes when you're forced to deal with something, that's when you deal with it. I would like to deal with something for once where it wasn't because I absolutely have to, but whatever, that's kind of how it just kind of felt. So in that kind of way, as a silver lining, I feel like I've done a lot of growing up with it this time. And given the circumstances and stuff that this has put us through, I've learned more about myself in those circumstances. I've learned more about like where my energy comes from and things about myself that I hadn't realized before, if that was to be a positive. Okay, I'm going to go on to the next question. So this question, I think it was pretty long, and I try to break it up into multiple parts. So I'll read off the first couple of sentences first. And I think this one is self-contained in a way. I imagine that you feel you've built a life here rather than that you are taking a break from your life in your home country. Does that feel true to you?
Okay.
Oh, Cam, please.
Yeah, I have kind of a lot of thoughts on this. I would say definitely recently, I felt like I've built a life here, mainly because I've recently gotten married and we've moved into an apartment together. We have a dog, those big life things have happened, but that is just recently. Like that was the first time I would say I felt like I've built a life here. Up until that point, it 100% felt like I was just taking a pause. And I've talked to, Dave, and I think maybe even Dom about this. Like my first couple times visiting back home, I definitely had that feeling of like, wait, you guys have been living life without me. Like what I've missed so much. Like that's not fair. You guys were supposed to wait for me. So no, I definitely think that's a common feeling that probably a lot of people have. I don't think, just because we've been here for a long time, I wouldn't say that everyone has this feeling of like, oh yeah, I've built a life here. It's a very common thing to just be like, nope, yep, everything back home is on pause. And when I go back, it's going to be the exact same it was when I get back. So that's my thoughts on that.
Yeah, thank you. Veronica.
Yeah, I would say that especially given with the amount of time being much longer than a normal jet usually gets in Japan, that I do feel like I have kind of made this a bit my home. And I think I felt that a lot going home for the holidays just recently, coming back from going home from the holidays, because I hadn't been home in 2 years. And before that, it had been every other year before that. And so it definitely, a little bit like echoing what Cameron said, when I went home, it was like time went on without me. Like I was seeing all of my cousins who were like little children, tiny babies. And then I went and met them and I'm like, what the heck, you're taller than me now. And so it's like, it does feel like sometimes I would be thinking or having conversations and trying to catch myself saying, yeah, well, I'm going to be going home in 2 weeks. And like, wait a minute, but this is my home. I'm going back to Japan in 2 weeks. And so I think to an extent it has, because when you're here for that long, when you're here for this long, you start to build connections and you start to put down roots in a sense in this community that you're a part of. So it does kind of start to feel like home instead of just visiting, so that when you do go back home, especially that first year, going back home that first year, it felt like a vacation, like I was visiting somewhere versus going home for the holidays. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Dom.
I find this to be an interesting question, just because for me, it's like, I don't really see it as, I see this as more of a spectrum coming here on jet. Like, I don't think it's either you're taking a break for your home country or you're, building a life here. Like for some people, it can be a stepping stone. Some people, like I came here, I was like, I want to teach. Like whether it was Japan, South Korea, somewhere in Europe, I was interested in teaching. I was just, considering that. But at the same time, I wasn't necessarily considering it like leaving my home behind. I'm always kind of just like, focusing on, of course, like where I am now, but also, what I'm saying is like, I've hit, I guess, my end goal as far as like my career. I don't necessarily know where it's going to take me in the future. Like I decided I want to teach. And like, I don't know, I guess everyone comes here from all different walks of life. Some people come here and it's literally just a year off, and that's totally fine. Some people come here like, oh, I just want to do, a few years, really get to experience the culture. And some people come here like, I'm moving to Japan. And then some of us are kind of just like, maybe a little bit of here, a little bit of there. Like, some parts they're taking, some parts they're leaving from both, their home country and here. So I guess there's not, for me, it's not really a clear cut one or the other. It's a very gray area. That's just, I don't know, my take on the matter.
That's really interesting. Thank you. Juan.
Yeah, like for me, same as Dom. Like I'm not taking a break from anything. It's just part of my progression in life. But I'm also not making like a home here. You know what I mean? It's part of like the search, I guess, for what's next. I haven't bought a single piece of furniture in 5 years.
And Oliver, please.
Yeah, kind of what Juan just said. I have like this really bad chair in my apartment that I never replaced because I never thought I would be here for 5 years. It kind of sneaks up on you. It's not like something that you plan. I think most of us are just going through 1 year at a time. And before you know it, like things have happened in life. Like we're going on that journey. Like Dom said, we're now different people. Like I think most of us are in a completely different situation than we would have imagined in our first year, or what our goal was for this JET program, which is not necessarily a bad thing. That's just, you know, life going through. And I think, you know, the idea of like, is this my home or is Canada my home? It's, I like what was mentioned, that it's a spectrum, because I think, I don't know if I can say, oh, Shimane is my home, my only home. But I've realized recently that, especially with the pandemic, home, like back home, might not be the same place that it was when we left. And the last time I went home was in 2018. So it's been a while. And now with all the whole pandemic, you know, I would probably get reverse culture shock. Like I absolutely would. So I guess it's just a journey. And what I'd say to first years is to not have too much of a set idea, because things just progress in ways you don't expect. And there's a proverb that was it a Jewish proverb? Somewhere I read, it was a joke. How do you make God laugh? And the answer is, tell him your plans, which I think pretty much summarizes my journey on JET. So yeah, that's my 2 cents.
Thank you. And then I just want to let people know that we're coming up to 45, which was when we were scheduled to finish this thing. So if people need to go, including the unicorns, please feel free. I'm happy to continue a little bit longer to try to get through the next 2 or 3 questions that were submitted, as long as everyone else is comfortable is what I'm trying to say. Okay, thank you. And then very quickly, I think, at first, I didn't think I was going to chime in this, because I feel like my situation is quite different. But I'll chime in just in case. I don't know. Like, there's first years out there and I don't know your backgrounds and stuff. So who knows, right? I stopped feeling like my home was my home a while ago. Like, I don't know how long it's been now. I lived abroad from the UK in North Macedonia now, sorry, Macedonia, now known as North Macedonia, for a while, like 3 years before I came to Japan. And when I think about the UK and going back there, yeah, I think about family and I think about my friends, but I don't think of it like, oh yeah, that's my home, that's what I'm going back to. And I don't think here as like, oh, this is like temporary or permanent or whatever. I really don't think like that anymore. Maybe I did at one point, or I had like what we used to call like a 5-year plan or whatever. But after a few years of the ground just breaking underneath you, when you try to make these plans, I was like, this is a bit soul crushing, trying to think about navigating your way through a world which doesn't let you really make those plans. I think in earnest, like, of course, having a plan is fine. Like, just don't get caught up in scaffolding and building this idea about exactly where you need to be in however many years, or exactly you have to outline, like, I have to be here for this many years for it to make sense or something like that. I think you're just overcomplicating it, in my personal opinion. But you do you, of course. For me, when it comes to thinking about this place as a home or whatever, my home is just wherever my heart is, as corny as that sounds. As long as I'm with my wife over here and there's delivery, and then that's it. That's all I need. And pizza and good people.
Without pineapple?
I said with good people.
You need pineapple.
Damn it, Juan, we weren't going to bring this up again. Last SDC, there was tears. Okay, so this was part of more of a question. So I'm going to finish the rest of that part of the question. How do you view these many years of your life in terms of the whole picture? Is viewing it as a long-term or quest towards permanency what sets apart 5th-year jets and shorter stays? It's quite specific if anyone wants to chime in at the rest of that.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, Enge, please.
Could you repeat the question again,
Yeah, of
please?
course. So how do you view these many years of your life in terms of the whole picture? Is viewing it as a longer term / quest towards permanency what sets apart 5th-year jets and shorter stays?
Okay, I'm gonna answer the part of how do I view my 5 years here. Like some of you said, I remember my boss asking me back home when I was coming here, oh, are you coming back after 3 years? You still have this job. And I said, no, I cannot give you an answer. I am going. So my focus was, I am going there. I will leave when I leave. And I also don't use, I will come back home, because I don't feel the need to come back home. I will go wherever life takes me. So, so my focus being here is, I'm here, this is what I want to do, I'll do my best, and life will take me to the next step of my life. The next step or next stage could be here or could be elsewhere. However, I have invested in my teaching skills here, improving my teaching skills in terms of teaching English as a second language. I have also started studying other things that are becoming of interest for me, that I feel like I could do in the future out of this space or with this space. So the things that I'm preparing myself for, I can do while here, I can do while anyway. So I'm building my skills to become the person I envision myself to be, but I'm not confined into any space or any geographical area. I'm not in a container. So whatever I'm building can be useful wherever I want to go.
Don't
So
put Engie in a
that's
container.
how I view my that's how I view my 5 years. So I'm here, I'm learning, I'm building, I'm growing, and I'm just preparing myself for the next phase, whatever that may be, wherever that may be.
Thank you. Yeah, I respect that a lot. I was just going to say, like, that's exactly how I've been trying to live my life. It's tricky, isn't it? Depending on what culture you come from, what background you come from, this kind of notion, exactly what you're talking about, is something that I've been striving towards, but it severely clashes from where I'm from. It's not a normal way for people of my ilk, my background, to think like, and it causes a lot of friction, causes a lot of problems.
Yeah.
Veronica, please.
Sure. I think for the second part was like the separation between 5 years and shorter term jet. I think a lot of that has to do with what was your goal for coming here. Like for some people, their goal of coming to Japan, it can be resolved within that shorter stay of 1 to 3 years or 4 years. For some, it's something that they want the whole 5-year experience in order to achieve that goal. For me personally, I was a military brat, but never got to live overseas. And so the amount of time I spent living overseas didn't really have a limit for me. I just wanted to have that experience. So the longer I was able to stay, obviously, the more I was going to take, because it was just like, yeah. And given that I wanted to continue teaching, and teaching was a career that I had been interested in at the start, I just saw this as just more classroom experience for when I returned, because then I'll have this much classroom experience. They might not be able to use it in professionally as a resume, like for fulfilling a certification when I get back, but the schools that I apply to could still see that as, hey, I have classroom experience for so long in a foreign country. To the point where like I said, I've got family who teach, and so one of my aunts has already told me that the vice principal of her school is very eager to see my resume when I get home, so that's nice. Yeah, I think a lot of that, the separation is going to be, what was your goal for coming, and how long do you think? And it's totally fine and totally valid for that goal to change the more time you spend here. So like when you get towards the end of that first year and see that your goal wasn't met yet, it's perfectly valid to want to extend it. Or maybe you've seen that, this doesn't really help the way you want and decide to go home and look into something else. It's totally valid. It just depends on what your future goal was. I think it varies from person to person.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you. Cameron, please.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I had this all thought out and I forgot it already. No, but you know, for me, I came here straight out of college, and I just came into it with like, oh yeah, I'll probably just do like 1 or 2 years. I just want the experience, like Veronica was saying. I want that experience of living abroad, but like I probably, you know, I don't see myself doing this long term. And going back to like the last question, Dom and Oliver both kind of mentioned it. Like the time just kind of snuck up fast, and like every year I was always looking at it as like it's a 1-year contract. It's just 1 year, just do 1 year. And you know, if you want to stay, you can add another. And like every year I just found myself with new goals. And like before I knew it, I was on my 5th year. Like it kind of pops up out of nowhere. So I think that can also happen. I don't think, you know, everyone who stays here long term came into it expecting to stay long term. You kind of just have new goals along the way, or you know, you just feel like you have unfinished business and you want to stay. And as for how I look at this experience, these 5 years, yeah, like Dom was saying, you know, it's very much a stepping stone for me. Like I mean, I see it as, like I said, I came straight out of college, and I'm going to use this experience to build towards my future and what I plan to do. Whether that be permanently here in Japan forever, then so be it. Or if it leads me somewhere else, it leads me somewhere else. But like I definitely see this time as like a stepping stone to learn about myself in a professional sense, and learn about myself in a personal sense, and who I am as a person, and what I want for myself and what I want for my future. So I think that's how I would look at it.
Yeah. Thank you. And then Dom.
I want to yell at Cam because he took about everything I was about to say, but I want to pose a question to this group of unicorns. How many of you guys came here intending to do, let's say, more than 2 years? Okay, so a few of us. So even amongst us, like, you know, as Cam was just saying, like it's and harkening back to what I was saying, it's a spectrum. It's not like we came here necessarily. Well, some of us maybe, some of us, you know, it was completely unintentional. Like we just took each year as it came, and you know, there is a reason for, you know, all of us have different reasons, but at the end of the day, I guarantee every single one of us are here because we enjoyed our situation in some way, shape, or form, whether it's our work situation, life situation, you know, living situation, or some combination of those plus more, you know, groups or whatever we do with the community, stuff like that. We've all stayed for some reason or another. Some of us intentionally, some of us, it was just kind of like, oh, I just really like living here. Whether it's long term or not. But all I know is that for now, for this moment right now, up until this point, obviously I'm in my 6th year, I think I've hit my limit. I have to figure out what's next. But could it keep me in Japan the rest of my life? Yeah. Was that the intention? Not necessarily when I got here. But I also might end up back in the States. It might end up being somewhere completely different from either the States or Japan. So it's I've beaten this horse to death at this point, but it's a spectrum. It really is. And that's just kind of I don't think it's as black and white. Like we were you guys. Most of us were you guys, you first years. We came here, just said, 1, 2, maybe 3 years most. And I guarantee, you know, well, I don't want to say I guarantee. Some of us were you guys. We were you, and then it just kind of happened that we stayed here. Yeah.
Yep. Thank you. Rumana.
Yeah, a lot of the things that were already mentioned. I would like to say that a lot of people struggle with what they want in life. And that kind of feeds into the taking it year by year and seeing where you are. And that's completely legitimate. Personally, I always knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to leave my country since I was a child because my character, my interests do not fit in that society. I know what I want professionally. I know what I want to romantically. I know what I want in a lot of things. And I even have a general idea of what I want from a society perspective. The problem is that last one, I don't know where to find it. So I've been going through different countries, and each of them have good things and bad things. And one of the hardest things to do is to decide which bad things are things you can take long term and which good things are necessary good things that you can't live without. So a part of it is that constant thing with Japan of me yo-yoing between, I really hate Japanese food. I'm sorry, it just doesn't click with me. But on the other hand, there's so many nice things here about how mindful the society is. And there's constantly ups and downs. Okay, sexism is a problem, but clean streets, salaries and overwork, but keeping kind of some traditions and greenery and appreciating history, stuff like that. It just keeps yo-yoing, and it's very difficult to make a choice.
Yeah, thank you. I'll just quickly add on again. This is something I wasn't sure if I was going to necessarily say, but again, I don't want to assume that there's no one like me out there or whatever. Okay, I think we had a technical hiccup. Someone let me know when they come back in, because I don't know if it shoves them back in to those picture frames or if I have to do it manually. I'll just say then, just while I wait for them as well, that in my case, Japan, specifically Japan, and coming here and stuff was interesting. I'm from the UK. I'm a British Asian, which means that my family's from Pakistan. I was born and raised in the UK, and I came from a place in the north that wasn't particularly a place that there was a lot of different types of people, a lot of people, not enough jobs. It creates a type of society and a place where I never really felt like I was fully a part of the society in many ways, because there was always some sort of discrimination or racist event or ongoing periodically throughout my entire life, basically. And I always felt on the outskirts, really. I didn't really feel welcomed in my community where I was. Oftentimes where I'm from, the communities fracture themselves and they just stay within their own hubble stuff. I was fortunate in many ways. It's got better over time, and my generation, it wasn't so bad. A lot of my friends and stuff, I grew up in a diverse place, and I'm happy and proud of the friends that I made, and they shaped me as a person who didn't have a lot of bitterness and things that I wasn't too far from going down certain alleys and stuff like that. When I came to Japan, it was really interesting because some of the stuff that I hear from other Jets when it comes to culture and coming to Japan is this feeling that you're not part of the society or not part of being welcomed in or something, or like basically there's a point where there's a line drawn basically with how welcome you can be here. And I'm not saying that that's not true or anything like that, but I never felt it in the same way because that's been my entire life. The only difference is when I come here, they're significantly more polite about it. And that's kind of been my experience. And so coming here, racially speaking, has been quite a vacation. It's a bit of a weird concept, I guess. I talked to some other people about this before, but that's kind of how it's felt for me. And in many ways, the kind of culture shock and stuff that I'm bracing myself for from returning to Europe in some ways is that kind of being like, do I have to return to a society where I openly feel so unwelcome? The racism in a lot of ways is quite different. The difference between ignorance and like malice, basically, in many ways. Okay, next question. Do you feel like you've done all you've wanted to accomplish here and are ready to return to your home country? Or is there always a sense of wanting more and wanting to stay on in the country, whether as an ALT or other? I think we've touched upon this a little bit, but if anyone wants to chime in on this, feel free. Engye, please.
So I have had an experience of teaching in high school for 3 years and now in junior high school. This is my second year in junior high school. So I have had 2 different experiences. And when I started here in junior high school, it was so different that I felt that I needed to reinvent myself. So in terms of feeling like my work is done, definitely no. Now I'm answering questions I had in high school, like, oh, in high school I had this question, why don't my students answer when I say this? Or why don't they understand this? Now I'm filling the gaps. And And now in junior high school, I'm like, yeah, this is what I can do to make sure that when they go to high school, they like that. But then I also go to elementary schools and I'm like, oh, this is another gap and this is what I can do. And because I have an opportunity to work with support English teachers who go to elementary school, I have suggested to our BOE that we do sort of like a workshop where we can work together to try and bridge the gaps and help them throughout the phases. So because I'm passionate about education, I'm learning more about how to become a better teacher, a better second language teacher, and how to impart my skills here. My horizon keeps growing and changing. So I don't know when I feel like my work is done, because I just keep giving myself more opportunities and expanding and letting myself see more opportunities and use them as I go. Yeah, so that's where I am. Thank you.
Oh boy. Okay. Surprise. Dom, please. You've moved.
Yeah, I mean, there are things that pop up like all the time. You're like, oh, like, I mean, the short answer is like, no, only because, you know, you're always being exposed to new experiences. I was in the exact same situation as Inge. I moved to junior high and elementary, and I had the exact same reaction. I said, oh, that's why my kids couldn't answer these questions. But even aside from that specific thing, I guess the one thing the concrete thing I do wish I could have done more of is travel, but it's not that I didn't get a chance to. It's like, for me, I just, you know, me and my best friend's student loans don't always get along. So between that, I mean, well, that's probably like the one thing. And then Corona happened, of course. Besides that, though, like, you know, I was able to do things like taiko. I was able to join a boxing gym, which was not something I ever thought I'd do. I became I mentioned this, you know, several times today. I became my school's debate tanto, I guess you want to say. Like, I was the leader of the debate team. Like, all these things, like, there are things that constantly come up that, like, you don't even know you would have wanted to do otherwise. So I would say the short answer in general is no, I don't think I'm fulfilled, only because I know something else is going to come up. It's like, things always come up and you'd never expect them to. I've done, you know, a whole bunch of community events I never thought I'd do. I became AJET president before passing it on to Cam. We did a whole bunch of stuff that I never thought I'd do. So it's a crazy place, our little pocket of Japan here, and you never would expect it being so far out in the countryside. But things come up that you would never expect. We have. I just want to throw this last thing out there. We have in Masuda a master leather worker who is like I don't want to say the only one in Japan, but one of very, very few at the most. And he did before Corona a Western themed cowboy barbecue twice a year. And you would never expect to see this way out here in you know, Inaka ass Japan. These experiences just pop up, man, and you would just never expect it. So I will never be fully fulfilled, because I know there's always going to be something around the corner.
Yeah, that's great. I echo the same thing. There's a lot of things that have propped up in this position, in this job, in our time here, that I didn't expect at all. And I was just wanted to, same as Enge and Dom, like, for me in particular, it's the students. There's something about, like, I was teaching before I came here at a university, and I was teaching digital art, and I really enjoyed it then too. And I connected with students on like a certain level. But coming here, go to junior high schools, elementary, I connected with kids, and they brought me so much fulfillment in a way that I didn't expect. And some ways that I can't describe. And some of them, like the curveballs in a way, like, that's why I always talk about not underestimating them. And just like how proud I am of some of them, or just how meaningful being in the classroom is sometimes with the kids. One thing I was going to say during the keynote that I didn't have time for, and I quickly will mention it here, is that when I was on Oki, when I first came to Oki, I went to like 6 elementary schools, 4 junior high schools. And in one of those elementary schools, there was a little girl, she was in the 5th grade at the time, I think, when I met her. I always get a bit confused because they change over in April and we come in like September, not the point. Anyway, and basically I've said goodbye to her so many times because we changed schools. And then I moved away from Oki, I became PA, which again, I didn't expect to become PA. And then because of the pandemic, Kita High School didn't get an ALT. I ended up going there. She was a student there. And then just recently, as of last year, I had to say goodbye to her again. And I made like this off joke of being like, I guess I'll see you next year somehow anyway. I've seen this little girl grow up and like over time, just I can't believe that I've made an impression on this human who then has thoughts and feelings and things to do with things that I have taught her. Just as an example, like, so the last lesson that I had with this one student, this is just like one example of so many things that can happen with students. I had the last lesson at that class, she was sick and she couldn't attend. And so I actually asked the teacher if she was there, and he explained to me, oh, I'm sorry, she was not feeling very well. And I felt really bad. So then afterwards, I did like a little card for her. And I gave it to the JTE to give to her to basically say, oh, I'm sorry you were feeling bad. I hope you get well soon. It was lovely being your teacher over all these years and stuff. You've grown so much. I'm so proud of you. Keep at it. She was a great student. And then I still visit that school every now and then to go to the ESS. And me and my wife were walking there one day and she happened to see us and she recognizes Rumina too. Of course, she's visited the schools at the time. She runs over to us. She was so happy to see me. And she's like going through her bag. She couldn't even come up with the words. And then she pulled out this tiny little envelope with a little Shimane sticker on it. And she said, I made this for you. And I was like, oh, thank you. And she said, like, I'm sorry I couldn't be at the lesson. I was not feeling very well. Thank you for everything. And she was like so flustered. She was trying to come up with like things that she was saying in the card, like, oh, thank you for all the lessons, everything that you've taught me about this, about that. And she gave it to me and she went off. And then later on, when I read it, it was basically, she had wrote on these tiny little pieces of paper. I didn't know they made paper this small. And she had wrote in tiny little letters in English. And she talked about all the things that she had learned from me. And this is like the whole thing. She said, I had no idea about Islam, Ramadan, all the way to BLM, Black Lives Matter, about discrimination. And so a bunch of stuff that were really like hardcore topics that I brought up that I didn't expect any of the kids to really absorb. And she was talking about just like all the other fun things. As she always mentioned, like how fun the games were and how she was so inspired to go into art because of me and stuff like that. And I just want to make it really clear for my own reputation. I am so manly, I never cry, but I was really close in this very moment in time. So I'll never forget that. I just wanted to throw that out there. Like, you never know what these things are going to do. Like, I've been here for so long. My beard is now white and this girl is almost as tall as I am. It's insane. Like, that's not how time is supposed to work. Every time I think about her as well, like I think of her like being like really short, and then I see I'm like, oh damn, she's grown. Every single time. Every time it surprises me. Okay, we have one more question to get through. I wish it was at a slightly better tone, but it's still a very important question. Was there anything that made you regret staying in Japan? Rumina.
Both my grandparents were buried and I didn't even get to go to their funerals being here. One of the most painful thing was I had a ticket and I was going to visit my family a week before my flight. My grandfather passed away. And then when my grandmother got a stroke, it was right as the pandemic was starting. And I just panicked that the same thing was going to happen. So I bought a ticket and I left, and I was just praying that I would get to her and see her and then manage to get back in Japan. And a month after I managed to get back, they closed the borders and nobody could get in. And that closing of borders and knowing that if somebody else is dying, if something else is happening, I can't leave, I can't move unless maybe I can get out, but then I can't get back to my husband. that made me feel so cut off from my family and made me terrified. So that is one part that makes me feel like maybe Japan is not the place for me if this can happen.
Thank you, Sharon. Veronica, please. Mike. Oh,
Sorry, yeah,
Oh,
my
there
new
we go, you
connection's a bit bad, sorry about that, but I think on a similar way as Ramana, the very first year that I was unable to go home was the year that one of my aunts suffered a brain aneurysm. So we were very scared that she was not going to make it, and I had not seen her for over a year, going on 2, and so that was very hard to have to stay behind because I'm very close with a lot of my families, even though they're aunts and uncles. Like I would see them every year, every summer, every Christmas. So I think that hit really hard, not being able to go home and see her that year. I have both of my grandfathers, like out of my grandparents, I have one that's passed away, but both of my grandfather's health is kind of starting to decline. So like for me, at least up until I get to go home in the summer, that's going to be kind of a small worry that I'm going to be having in the back of my head that like grandpa isn't doing too well, and nervous of whether I'm going to get to see them again or not. But I think that's really the only thing that regret as far as just not being able to go home because it was something that we couldn't help. It was a pandemic, so that kept me from being able to visit over the holidays and see family. So a bit, that time loss is a little bit, I was feeling a bit stressed, a bit down during that winter holiday.
yeah. I'm really sorry for both of you. Dom.
Yeah, I mean, I think similarly, mine is, I guess it's slightly more pandemic related as opposed, it's a little bit of both, but like, well, during the pandemic, I shit you not, everyone in my life, like, decided to get married within the course of a year. Both my sisters got married. 3 or 4 of my cousins got married. At least 2 or 3 of my friends got married. And it was within a single year span. I could not make it for a single one of them. My sisters both had kids. And my brother had a kid. So I had now 3 nieces and nephews that I've never met. Well, that's a lot. One I met, like, well, two I hadn't. And I thank God for technology, if nothing else, because I was at the very least able to be, video called in from someone's phone for, some of the weddings here and there. But that was, I guess ultimately that was the result more of, I guess, the pandemic as opposed to being here so long. But this, I guess, flipping the question out real quick, for me, I always look at it from the opposite perspective. I mean, this is everyone, not everyone doesn't get homesick. So like a lot of people do, I understand that. I don't. I try to look at where I'm in now and just focus on the good things. So like I'm in an experience that very few people have the chance to experience. So like I get to experience a whole bunch of new, food and culture. And a lot of people say, oh, like, they miss certain foods or things back home. I try just not to think about that. And I understand everyone's brain works very differently. And some people just really, really miss certain things. I guess I just don't have that mentality. I just try to focus on the here and now and the things I can do, as opposed to what do I regret? Do I have some regrets? Yeah, I'd be lying if I said I don't. But I guess that's just how I try to look at our current situation.
Thank you. Cameron, please.
Yeah, I mean, Dom kind of touched on what I was going to say, is that like, I mean, I would say I regret like the mistimed from back home. Like My brother also had a son, so I now have a nephew that I've never met. I've lost grandparents that I wasn't able to go home for their funerals and stuff. Like, I've experienced all those things. And, yeah, I don't know. I'm hesitant to say it's a regret because, in my opinion, not my opinion, I've talked about it a lot with my mom because she and I are really close. And, she put a big emphasis on like, even if I wasn't in Japan, these events, like I would still, how do I put it? When I go home to visit and things like that, obviously we have all these events, we hang out, we spend all this time together, but it's like, that wouldn't be happening if I wasn't in Japan, if that makes sense. Like if I was living at home, I would be working, I would be, in my own place and whatnot. And like, I guess my point is that I wouldn't call these things regrets. I'm just living life in a different spot in a sense. So like, I don't regret coming to Japan because these other things have happened. But yes, I am upset that I didn't get to experience these other things because I was in Japan. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. That makes a lot of sense. Juan.
Yeah. So yeah, for same, like I've lost family and friends every year for the past 3 years. So, and I'm guessing I'll probably lose somebody this year also. And I've only joined through like a video call to the funeral or whatnot. But I don't see it as regret. Like Dom and Cam said, I chose to be here. So like it's my decision. I don't want to be like to look at it as like regret something. It's my decision, and I mean, unfortunately some things happen, but like I don't want to see it as in like a negative light. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Oh boy, that was the last question, but I really feel like we need to end on like a we can't end like this, can we?
Let's get pizza with banana.
We can do it.
But it somehow got worse.
A different debate at the very least.
Delivery.
Thanks,
We can
Juan.
Order delivery.
Let's argue something else.
Oh boy. Yeah, that's a lot. Thank you everyone for sharing their thoughts and stuff. I'll throw in my like 2 cents in this. I think everyone's covered it excellently. There is something to do with the vocabulary of the word regret, I think, as well. Like this idea that like we would have chose differently or something like that is often the connotation I feel. And I don't know if necessarily that's what we're all saying or whatever that we're going at with this. I do think I've also lost people. I've got like my community back home, they're like rabbits. I've got so many like kids running around that I've never met before. It's insane trying to just keep up with it. They grow up so fast, and time, like someone mentioned earlier on, time just keeps going no matter where you are. Like what's happening back home isn't necessarily what it is when you left, and people change in different ways, unexpected ways. Sometimes we all kind of grow into it. It's hard. Some of that aspect is hard. When I think about regret, I think a lot of them are personal things that are within my control, so to speak, or at least the things I assume that I have control of. People dying and stuff. One of the things about having a big family is that like since I was a kid, there was always someone dying, there was always someone getting married, there was always a new kid. Obviously it affects everyone differently, and when it's your immediate family. But like Veronica was saying, I also come from a community where like my aunts and uncles were really close. When my uncle passed due to COVID, like last year and stuff, like it really shook me. I was very close to him. And like being so far away makes it weird in a very difficult way. Like for me personally, we have such a funeral, like such a tradition, such a thing that's set up. Not being there and like having my eyes kind of feast in a weird way on what's going on meant that like part of me knows that some of the mourning is waiting for me there when I go back home. Like I can't imagine walking into my uncle's house and him not being there yet, because I haven't done that. So this is weird relationship, this weird thing that happens to me personally when I think about going home after so much time and so much pain and all the rest of it. It's complicated, and I think a lot of that comes with individuality. When it comes to like just the JET program, I understand there's also possibly the first years maybe also be thinking about career-wise and regret. And we've already touched upon like how things change all the time. You do the best you can with what you've got wherever you are. And I think it speaks volumes that like a lot of people here, that we have 6th years, 7th years, and it speaks volumes to the fact that they felt secure enough, happy enough, healthy enough to continue living and working here. Like what I'm trying to say is it's a valid option. You're asking these people, you're asking us about regret, you're asking us about like how we think about staying here and stuff. Yeah, there's going to be trimmings around some difficulties and things that we're going to brush up against. But generally speaking, there's a reason why we stuck here that was probably positive overall. So I don't want to like dampen anyone or anything like that when it comes to feeling that way. It's very individualistic in that kind of way too. Dom, please. Oh, Mike. Still Mike.
Sorry, I thought I hit it the second time. First of all, it's gonna sound weird because this is for reasons I won't go into. This is my 4th time doing the unicorn panel. But this is by far the heaviest set of questions I think we've gotten. And they're good questions, and some of them are kind of brain stuffers. But I just want to say thank you guys to the first years for making us think. It's not something we do very often. That's all.
Wonderful. And then I guess wow, we've took so much extra time. I think we should wrap up now, but usually I open the floor for questions and stuff. How does everyone feel? Shall we wrap up here? I think this has covered a lot of stuff. I feel like if anyone out there has any questions, any one of us here would be happy to answer them if you like direct messages or whatever. So that's probably where I'll leave it because everyone's done a lot. Yeah, on the Discord. Yep. Type it into the Discord, or you can send a message at any time and stuff. So we should probably close out at this point. Oliver.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say that's probably a good leeway to promote the AJET's Zoom Nomikai tomorrow.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. If anyone wants to ask more questions in a more casual.
Yeah, it's this picture frame down here.
Less Hogwarts. Oh, we can do Hogwarts. Who knows?
Yeah, please come join. We'll be playing games. It'll be a good old time.
But it's supposed to be fun, so let's keep that to a minimum. So,
Fun's
unless they're fun questions, in which case, dozo by all means.
Please come join us.
But seriously, if you do have serious questions, yeah, of course we're open to answer.
Yeah, and also maybe some of the questions might be specific and personal to maybe someone that you feel like might have like something you're looking for. I will speak for everyone. Feel free to directly go with that specific question to that person that you think might have an experience you're looking for, or may have an idea of what you're going through.
Yeah.
You'll never know. Yeah, so I think all of us here are open for such, so don't be afraid to reach out. Even if we are not in the same city, just reach out. Like I don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. That is within your control too.
Yeah, if ask us to, we may know somebody to connect you with if we don't know ourselves, or if you feel the need, please, by all means, recommend me. I'm happy to talk to anybody.
Yeah. Good. I feel like they just did our PA job for us. I think we're good.
That's good. That was a good closing.
Thank you, PAs. Let's wrap up for the rest of this. So thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you for everyone who's been listening this entire time. And thank you for the questions submitted. This has been SDC 2022. Let's do something in person next time, shall we? If the pandemic wants to chill out for a bit.
Please. I'm not even going to be here, but please.
Oh boy, yeah. Okay, thank you everyone. Take care. Have a lovely 3-day weekend.
Take it easy.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. It's got it.